until I had to go back and cancel that contract with the predators, knowing fully well that now I have developed the wherewithal and the strength, capacities, tools, whatever I need to be able to actually now fulfill my promise to the universe in this lifetime. So traveling back into those different lifetimes actually helped me to become who I am today, and the confidence that I have to now follow my true path. And from the different schools of thought, I've come to understand that there are probably three different levels of that. So that is, at an alpha state. Then you go into the theta state. For example, like yesterday, you kind of asked me about what could be the purpose for this session. And that, of course, could not come from a beta or an alpha. It required another level. I had to go into a higher dimension. I didn't have to go all the way up there, but in between, where I said, you know what, Akanksshaa, that there is this combination lock, just like a bank locker, where the bank and you have to turn the keys to kind of open. I said, we both have the keys, and we have to open this combination lock so that light can come onto the planet. So those are the kind of insights you get at the theta.
Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul podcast and a talk show. On this show, we talk about deep spiritual and mystical experiences of people which we normally shy away talking about. We are more than our physical body. We are spiritual beings on a human journey, and we discuss how a soul exists on multiple dimensions. We discuss science, technology, and spirituality point of views and perspectives on this show. Our purpose is to open our minds to limitless possibilities and our hearts to love and shine the light within bright. Our guest today is Maya Jennifer. Maya is the founder of Luminous Human, where she inspires individuals to master extrasensory perception and the bridge to a beautiful life. She's also founder of the Born Soup Company with a mission to promote well-being through food. Maya's journey to discover holographic well-being started 25 years ago. She was posted in Sri Lanka on work for 3 months, and she was staying in a luxury hotel in Colombo across the ocean. The country was going through a civil war. The windows of the hotel room were sealed. They couldn't be opened to enjoy even a whiff of fresh air. To add to the trauma, stepping out of the hotel was frightening, with military checkposts every few yards and men with rifles hung over their shoulders. So, in a strange land with no friends and no mobile phones, the only way out was to go within. So, existential questions started to plague her. Who am I? Is life about a better car, better house, more exotic vacations? When she returned back to India, she attended a third eye workshop. That at that time really didn't make sense to her, until one morning, while driving her car, she got a fleeting thought. Stop the car and call Debu, that was her mentor at that time. She brushed that thought aside, and moments later, she heard banging on her car. She had fallen asleep on the wheel and run over a man. Providence saved the man, not a scratch. She realized the existence of greater intelligence through this. She decided to pursue this intelligence, and then she came to study under her mentor. Switching dependency from the objective reality to the greater intelligence was not easy for her. There was a time when she touched her rock bottom. Her mentor was no more. She couldn't find another. And then a friend helped her. Life got better, but the balancing of the speed of the outer world and the stillness inside continued to be difficult for her. In this episode, she's talked about how she groomed herself to live a life that she loves now. We talked about extrasensory perception, how we can go beyond the senses to access that field, that intelligence And she explained very beautifully what are the levels through which you can get guidance, what are the different states, alpha, beta, theta, delta, how monks or sages receive their guidance, and what can we do to reach that level, to be in alignment with that higher intelligence, higher power. Very interesting conversation. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope you enjoyed it too. Hello, Maya. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Talk Show and a podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Akanksshaa. Extremely excited.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about how your spiritual journey started?
I think this happened almost about 25 to 27 years ago. I used to be working with the Taj Group as a chef, and I was sent to Sri Lanka to, to train the team there. And at that point of time, there was a civil war in the country. And so we were all the time inside the hotel when the question started coming to me, who am I? What is this life about? Is it only a better house and a car? Then when I came back to Bangalore, a friend of mine suggested there is, you seem to be searching for something. You've read a lot of books, but you don't seem to have found your answer. So this particular teacher, he works in the third eye space. So I said, I don't really understand it, but I don't mind exploring. So I did the workshop with him. But honestly, at that point, I was so much into the materialistic world, so it didn't really make sense to me. But one day I was going to the bus stop to actually pick up my parents. They had come down from Goa. And I had this fleeting thought, stop the car, call Debu. Debu was my mentor. And I thought to myself, when I see a phone booth, I'll make that call. But did I realize that I slept at the wheel and actually ran over a man. And at that moment, I don't know what happened, but I heard banging on the car. There was this auto rickshaw guy who asked me to reverse my car. There was another auto rickshaw driver there who pulled the man out from under the car, put him into an auto, put me into the same auto, and the extra auto driver came in. And then we went into the by lanes of the city and got medical aid. So we did all the tests. There was absolutely not even a scratch that was detected totally. So that set me thinking and was actually changed the trajectory of my life. Because I said, what is this intelligence that exists that warned me? But I used my rational mind, ignored the warning, and yet it had another plan B in place where it had these two auto rickshaw guys who would normally never come to your rescue, but they actually came and took us and provided us medical support. So that is where the journey started. What is this dimension that is more intelligent than I am?
Wow, so amazing. So, after that, what did you do? How did you proceed on your path to find out more about this dimension or the higher intelligence?
So then I moved to Bombay and I came to stay with my teacher and learned as much as I could for the period of time that he was alive, which was approximately about 5 years. And I learned about the third eye, the extrasensory perception, this luminous energy field, how to tap into it. And I was extremely a novice considering the background that I came from. So I would see a man coming on a bull, and then he would tell me, okay, this is Yama. So a lot of my repertoire got built, I would say, to use the term on the job or in training. So it's not that I came with a desire to develop this field, it was pretty much by accident.
So, after you started developing the extrasensory perception and getting in deeper into this, can you tell us what was your deepest spiritual experience?
Actually, there are not one major experience, but many smaller ones along the way. Um, that actually kind of opened doors to a better dimension or a possibility for me. One of my breakthroughs was, I would say, at the time that I was married actually, and my ex, and I'm divorced. My ex-husband was working in Jeddah. He was a chef just like me. And a couple of days after we got married, and our marriage was also very strange. We just walked into court with a couple of friends I'd witnessed, signed the papers. A couple of days later, he actually moved on to Jeddah. And when he came back after 12 years, I feel like I had grown beyond the relationship, but I wanted clarity because there's a lot of, otherwise the mind can come up with a lot of questions. But what I understood from this dimension is that when you use your extrasensory perception, it kind of gives you an answer which just feels right. Doesn't make sense in the real world, but there's an internal peace. So the image that I saw was about a previous lifetime where he was a king of a particular kingdom, and I was this lady who lived on the outskirts of the kingdom, and we had an intimate relationship, but he passed away, and there was no way that the relationship could be legalized. So this lifetime was completely to legalize that relationship of a previous lifetime. It seems very odd, and I had many friends say so sad, but honestly, it was what was meant to be. And so sooner or later, that was a natural extension of what was going to happen. So, did it make me complete? Yes. Was it sad? Yes. So, it was a combination of it, but at some point, one needs to follow what the extra sensory perception is actually communicating to us.
Wow, amazing. So, when you had these experiences using extrasensory perception, have you seen any other lifetimes apart from this lifetime?
Oh, yes. In fact, many lifetimes, because in this lifetime, I really had, I wouldn't want to use a very troubled or a traumatic life because there was nothing like that you see, in the physical world. Because I had a great job. My ex-husband was a fabulous human being. I have lovely friends, a beautiful family. So if you looked all the tick boxes, it was a perfect life in the objective reality. But at some level, I felt very incomplete. There was, anxiety. I would wake up very stressed. And at one point, I remember I would party a lot. But at one point, I could be with friends and completely lost and very depressed. And I tried to figure out what was this depression about. I didn't talk to many friends about it because I knew it was something internal. I would probably be recommended to a psychiatrist, which at that point I wasn't, I think, ready to explore that dimension. And so that's where I had to probe deeper into the extrasensory perception world and get a lot of answers. So some of the lifetimes, actually, the reason why I came onto the planet was to actually help the planet to go through this period of transition where there was going to be a lot of turbulence. And there was a shouter from the universe at some point asking for volunteers. And I happened to be one of those volunteers. So there were many lifetimes that I came to do the work, but every lifetime that I came, there was extreme trauma where I could see lifetimes where I either put in the gas chamber or burnt at the stake or fed to the red ants. So those were kind of the experiences that had really traumatized me. So it was nothing to do with this lifetime, but it was actually going into those lifetimes rewriting those contracts, the original contract, because, at one point I had decided that life is so tough, I might as well side with the predators. So I actually signed up with the predators, knowing fully well that my life may not be better, but it will give me a respite. And in this lifetime, I would get many thoughts, commit suicide, you're not worth it. But I couldn't figure out because there was nothing in this lifetime that had the information until I traveled back and I saw the time that I had switched over working for the universe to working for the predators. Until I had to go back and cancel that contract with the predators, knowing fully well that now I have developed the wherewithal and the strength, capacities, tools, whatever I need to be able to actually now fulfill my promise to the universe in this lifetime. So traveling back into those different lifetimes actually helped me to become who I am today and the confidence that I have to now follow my true path.
Wow, that is so brave of you. So you've been a light worker for so many lifetimes, and I do remember reading these stories, especially of women. They were called witches, and they were tortured because they were light workers in olden days. So really, really brave of you. So that trauma had imprints on you, and that's why you could go back and change the contracts. So you have been talking about extrasensory perception. Is it the same of intuition? What methodologies or techniques did you use to go back in these lifetimes and change your soul contracts? Was it past life regression? Was it Akashic records? Or what is ESP, and how is it different from intuition? So, can you just explain that?
That's an awesome question. So first, I mean, there are a lot of pieces in that. Let me string them together. So extrasensory perceptions is just which in common parlance would probably be the sixth sense. So just like we have the five senses which come with our body, there is a sixth sense which exactly replicates these five senses, but they are in another dimension. Now, when I say another dimension, let me also explain so that the listener can understand. So, there's something called a physical dimension where we have length, breadth, and height. So, our body is like an objective reality. And let's take the metaphor of ice. So, ice has length, breadth, and height. Objective reality, it matches with our body, length, breadth, and height. Now, when you raise the frequency of ice, it becomes water. So, water can take the shape of any container in which it is kept. That's exactly like our mind. Our mind starts to pick up information and try to put them within frameworks, boxes to make sense of it. Now, when you raise the frequency of ice, it becomes steam. Now, steam is something which we cannot see with our natural eyes, but it's something which we can experience. So just like infrared, you cannot see it with the normal eyes, but you need a machine that allows you to see it. And that's where extrasensory perception comes in. It's that machine that allows us to see the steam, the energy, the luminous energy field of the human being. So the luminous energy field of the human being is equivalent to the metaphor of steam. Some people call it the third eye, the inner vision, and they have many names from different schools of thought. I prefer extrasensory perception because it keeps it a little bit neutral and expands the view from which one can see this dimension of knowledge. So coming to your next point where you spoke about Akashic records. So Akashic records are also known by many names. So I was very intrigued with this lady who wrote the book The Field, Elizabeth McTaggart, where she says that all information in the universe is stored in the 0 point field. Some of us call it the living library, others call it the Akashic records. but it's actually a quantum field where anything and everything that happens in the universe, even the nano of a second, is actually recorded and encoded. And it is almost 95% is invisible to our everyday life. And it requires for us to actually get into a very subtle space. Because it is subtle, we need to develop our subtle sensory skills, honestly, to be able to access this information, the Akashic records, living library, the quantum field. So that's really the way it works.
Okay, amazing. So what you are saying essentially is the field, the quantum field, is equivalent to Akashic records, and you can go there and see your past lives or work with others on your soul contracts and change them. And you need to develop extrasensory or very subtle psychic powers or skills to do that. So, how is this? And you mentioned the word luminous. So, can you explain how light codes and how these skills are developed? Is there any relationship with light codes and these skills, or how can they be developed? And how can everybody be a luminous being or light being, especially now that we are ascending to higher dimension, into fifth dimension or more? Can you explain the importance of light codes and being luminous?
Interesting question. So, all of us are light beings. We are born as light beings, and that is how we got access to the planet. And until the age of 3, every kid actually, they don't have the objective reality skill sets. Their mind is not yet developed. The hardware is not developed. So they use their subtle sensory skills. But over time, it changes. So let me give you an example, which is pretty common. For example, a kid draws a black dot and calls it a cat. The mother will say, "This is not a cat, this is a dot. The cat has a body, it's got a tail, it's got whiskers, and that's what makes it." So slowly the child begins to realize that nobody seems to understand, or probably this is not, I'm making up this reality. So this is what a cat. And so we are brought into this world of objective reality. And so everything has to have a place, a sense, and it has to feel right. Now, so when I work with my clients to open, their develop extrasensory perception, which is also developing of the third eye or the inner vision, sometimes they come back with saying, "I'm seeing nothing." So I say, if you're seeing nothing, that means you have an expectation of what you have to see. So I say, "Do you see darkness?" They say yes. So I said, darkness is also seen, because everything comes from darkness and then light emerged from darkness. So it is the ability to let go of what I want to see and how I want to see it, and be open to how it is shown to me. So, like, if I had to speak about, the image before I got divorced, now that was not something I would, like, I remember my parents saying that, "You're married, why do you want to divorce?" Because that's the objective world. Make it work and see how to make it. But if there is another dimensional knowledge in place which is guiding me to do something different, I need to listen to it, or I can struggle till the cows come home and not really be happy. So that's really where it requires a depth of surrender, a depth of letting go, and being okay with the unknown, and not knowing what's going to show up or what people will say. So
Yeah.
for a long time, I struggled with what people would say, and therefore I shied away, because when I shared with people about my work, many called it mumbo jumbo, woo woo, and all of that. And so you kind of move away from it and say, "What do you do?" I do personality development. But it was only after I let go of all the contracts of the previous lifetime and those that I'm able to stand my ground and say, this is who I am, and this is you don't for you it doesn't exist, but for me it's very real and it exists.
Yeah, amazing. It goes far beyond the personality. So I remember you had talked about the metaphor of ice, and when we change the frequency, it changes its form. And you mentioned the mind is the same way. When you change its frequency, it is able to change its form and flow differently. You also mentioned about that you had seen higher vibration timelines where different possibilities were available, even though the objective reality here was different. So, for example, at the time of your divorce. So, how can people actually work with the mind and probably transcend mind? Because if we have to surrender to the universe, we have to go beyond the mind and then actually get that information and then bring it to our objective reality or manifest it. So, how can people work around that? Because people don't have the knowledge of how to work with the mind and how to reach there that dimension and bring that higher vibration timeline into our reality.
Wow, that's a profound question. So let me answer it. So when my teacher was alive, I had a complete support structure. And then when he moved to the other dimension, I realized that I was trained for a world that did not exist. And so I struggled with this inner world, which is silent and has all the answers, and this external world where, people say it's mumbo jumbo. I didn't have many friends because most of the time was, with my teacher and with his work and the students and all of that. So now, when he was no more, it was very lonely, and I was looking to make friends, but it was very difficult to make friends because people stayed away from me because thinking I had, some powers, but they're not really powers. It's just a way of being. And so I the I started to, and so at some point I actually let go of this entire extrasensory perception that I really had, and became an ordinary person, and I knew the difference. And I had actually reached the bottom of the abyss where there was, no hope left. I tried to search for another mentor, but the space it was very new then. This is almost like 20 years ago. So you're kind of, there is no mentor. The only way was to come back yourself. So I have a friend who is very profound in the space. So he kind of kept guiding me from time to time. But he was like up there and he would say something which was many miles ahead for me to be able to understand. So then I went into the internet was really helpful. So when people talk about AI taking over, honestly, it does have a lot of information that helped me through those moments. And I went to many different schools of thought to understand what this whole dimension is about, what simpler ways to access it so that I can be in the everyday world, be with friends, enjoy a party, have a glass of wine, but I can also still be on my path of discovering myself. So, some of the key things that I discovered along the way, one was with Abraham Hicks, who has this, this chart which is called the emotional guidance chart, where they talk about if you want to have a particular manifestation, you need to have a particular band of feelings. So they refer to joy, appreciation, empowered, love. Now, if I'm in a lower vibrational state, there's no way that I'm going to be able to manifest something because I will come from the state of fear, despair, and depression. So my first task to myself was how do I move into a better feeling state? So every time I would drop into it, instead of saying, why is it happening to me? I started saying, why is it happening for me? How do I transform? Well, how can I get into a better feeling state? Because ultimately, the world is 95% energy, 5% objective. So I started working on my feelings. So I reached that place, But manifestation was really not my goal because I had already, traveled that journey. And then I felt a little stuck. Then I said, what will take me to the next level, the flip? And then I came across Dr. David Hawkins, who's written this book, Map of Consciousness. Incredible human being again, just like Abraham Hicks. And that's when I said, oh, wow, there's another dimension beyond love, empowerment, and freedom. And that's when I started saying, oh, this is where the extrasensory perception kind of comes in. So the initial stages, gratitude works a lot because it helps you to bridge. Now the key is not saying, it's not a lip service where I say, oh Akanksshaa, thank you for bringing me on your podcast, but I'm actually feeling within a deep gratefulness for allowing me to express my worldview on a particular topic. So the feeling is important because the feeling connects me with the subtleness within. And as I keep building up that subtleness and I can connect with those grades, say on Abraham Hicks' chart, and say, okay, so I've moved from fear into contentment, I've moved into positive expectation. So I need to keep getting back into the subtle world, bridging the objective world and the subtle world to take me deeper into the subtle world. So gratitude comes in, feeling grateful really works at the initial stages. And as we progress into this feeling of subtleness, the next would mean that, what if I'm the universe? So you just go into this space of imagination where you can kind of feel yourself as the universe and pick up those subtle feelings like, okay, I'm feeling free, I'm feeling peace, I'm feeling a kind of calm. So you're moving to those higher vibrational states and you're developing your subtleness. And as you develop your subtleness, at some point you're able to connect with the third eye, the subtleness of the universe, where you're ready to open yourself up from a place of love to receive information and insights. So that's really how to navigate.
Wow, so beautiful. Yeah, it's very profound. When you talked about gratitude, actually, gratitude is a practice that is highly recommended in positive psychology also. And there is a lot of scientific research on how it helps physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually, how we can progress as such. So beautifully you explained that how we can use feelings like a GPS and reach the higher vibrational states. And I'm also a big fan of Dr. David Hawkins. So yeah. So apart from the feelings
Just
that
one sec before, sorry, I'd just like to add one thing here. Is so when we have a goal, because we live in an objective reality and we must have goals, but our goals must have an area that we want to develop in spiritually, as a better. When I use the word spiritual, I mean, how can I become a better human being? So, what is that aspect that I need to add on? So, I must have a material goal, but I must also have a better human being goal at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, when you talked about feelings being your guidance system to access this luminous energy field, is there anything else that people need to keep in mind or use to access this luminous energy field? How can they do it?
Uh, so there are a couple of things. I remember once a client had come to me and he says, "This is what my brother-in-law has done to me, and I'll never forgive him." So I kept trying to get him to understand that if your brother-in-law has done something, you're forgiving him or not, when you're holding that in your space, you're actually blocking yourself from growing. And he will learn his lesson when he has to, but you have to exit his energy field so that you're not blocked on your path of evolution. So many of us struggle. We feel very righteous, including myself. That was part of the journey
Absolutely.
where I felt righteous about, but this person wronged me and how can I just let go? I need to prove. But it's only as you develop this ability to forgive. So I think who does this really well I cannot really remember the name of the person, but the technique is called Ho'oponopono.
Yeah. Dr. Hugh
But
Len,
only,
he
yeah,
introduced it.
but absolutely, he says it. Only a caveat here that when you're using it and forgiving, I would always recommend that you come from a higher vibrational space, that you're coming from a space of gratitude, and then doing it, it becomes easier to forgive and let go. Because when you're doing it from a low vibrational space, the mind is still very active, and while you're saying it, it's not really happening. So that is something which I learned along the way when using that technique. So that's really important, that people realize that it's my journey and I need to be able to let go. In order, or another way to let go easier is to look for an appreciation of why this incident happened for me. What can I learn from it? So that becomes, I find that a lot more easier than forgiving, because sometimes my mind comes up and says, who am I to forgive? In that case, I prefer the appreciation technique and saying, okay, this incident, what can I learn from it, and move on.
These are so simple, but such profound techniques or practices that people can use. So, one thing is that you raise your vibration by feeling the feeling, and you cannot do it from the space where you still have blocks and you have low vibration energy, or not to judge, but negative energy in your field. And when you are letting go of all of that, and then you can feel that feeling and raise your vibration and go to that luminous field of energy that you said. So many times people have this question as to, I access that field, let's say, and my intuition tells me something. But how do I discern what is my mind telling me versus what is my intuition telling me?
Interesting question. So whenever there's an answer coming from the mind, there's always a lot of doubt, a lot of questions coming up, and there's still the confusion hasn't left. Even though I may have made a decision, I still have, should I not, should I not? But the answer which comes from this luminous energy field space or through extrasensory perception, the moment you get the answer, there's silence. And you just don't need to do anything. You just naturally gravitate to take those actions to make that decision a reality. And also it benefits all of life everywhere. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So, also, these extra sensory perception, or the intuition, as you can call it, when you receive the messages or the downloads, you can receive it through different sources. As in our reality, we can receive it through different senses, because ultimately it is a mind that perceives through the senses. So when we get these downloads or when we get these messages, we receive them either through visions or through hearing or through just knowing. So can you just talk about a little, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and what are the different abilities?
But I think from the research that I've done and from the different schools of thought, I've come to understand that there are probably three different levels that could be. So there's one which can see objective reality but non-local. So suppose I'm sitting in India and somebody in Singapore and says, you know what, I can't find my house keys. Or for example, I have a very good example of this. My ex-husband, I remember a friend of mine was in Delhi and I really wanted to call her up, but I had lost her number. So I said, oh, you know what? I can't speak to Neelam because I don't have a number. And a moment later, he comes and he says, this is the number. So, and I actually dialed the number and it was Neelam on the other side. Now, there was no way he could have had Neelam's number because Neelam was my friend. So that is like the entry level where a lot of people can get these insights. Then the other level is where people can work. So that's an objective reality, but it's non-local. Then the other level is where you can connect with the energy centers. and become present to which energy center is blocked and needs healing. So that's where a lot of psychic healers kind of work with. And then there are those who work in very high dimensions, like the sages, who can, where their number of thoughts in their mind is almost like the delta, 2 to 4 thoughts a second. So there's literally no thoughts, and they're able to get the downloads or the insights from the universe. So literally, that's the state. The other state, which is the theta, where you have about 4 to 6 thoughts in the mind running. You have another. You do get insights, but they're of a different capacity. And then, if you go down in an alpha state, again, the kind of information and insights you get are different. And then at the beta, the everyday world is where you get a lot of solutions which are everyday world related. So you can go into these different bands. Each of these different bands have a different set of feelings. The number of thoughts in them are different. And that's how the insights you get are also different. So if I'm looking to invent something, then I need to go into that delta state with 2 to 4 thoughts a second, completely in the state of bliss and ecstasy for that download to happen. But if I'm looking for an everyday solution, then I can come into the theta state with 4 to 6 thoughts and get into that state where I'm feeling whole, I'm feeling complete, but not quite up there, neither down there, and then get a couple of ideas that could help me move ahead.
When you talked about the energy centers, do you mean the Indian chakra system or the meridians? Or can you talk a little bit about the energy centers in our body?
Okay, so for me, the energy centers are the starting point because they're present in the body. And I've also renamed the energy centers based on how I perceive them. For example, and I wanted to make it relatable to my clients in the everyday world so that they could know if I'm feeling this, where is it, and how do I come back. So, for example, the root center, I call it the center of calm. The reason why I call it calm is because when I feel rooted, I feel calm. So, how do I reduce the number of thoughts and get into that space? Then, when we come up to the reproductive area, is when we were in our mother's womb and felt very comfortable. So, I call it the comfort center because that's a space which allows us to become comfortable in our skin. So, if I'm disoriented and I'm not comfortable with who I am, that's an energy center I can go down to, energize it, and become comfortable. The next one in the solar plexus, because it's about the sun and energy, I call it the courage center. Because when I open up and I have the courage to open up, then I allow the universal energies to flow through. That allows my expansion, and that's which allows ideas to come to me. Then we move up to the heart, where is the center for compassion. And compassion allows me to not only be compassionate myself, but with everyone, because all of us are made up of yin and yang. So we do have our positive moments, we do have our negative. And negative is not bad. Negative only means negative into what? So if I want to move in, I'm sad and I need to move into a happy state, I just need to come back into that positive state. So negative just tells me how far away I'm from positive and doesn't have any bad connotations as such. Then we come to the throat center. So here is where I call it the center for coherence because it allows me to be coherent and authentic with who I am. So when I speak from a place of coherence and authenticity. Then it comes to the forehead, which is the clarity center. So that's where, when I'm, almost there with the clouds, I can get the clear vision as to the path ahead. And then the crown center, what I call the connection, which allows my astral self and my physical and emotional self to kind of be connected. So that's how I look at it. And so I always advise my clients not to get locked into the names of the centers. And I really wanted them to move away from it, but get into the feeling state of each center so that you know where you are and then you can use the emotional guidance chart or the chart of David Hawkins to navigate back to the state that is important for you at that point of time.
Sometime back, you talked about alpha, beta, theta, and delta states and how you can get the downloads. So, can you give us some examples of how you have received downloads, or any of your clients have received downloads in those particular states? So, just that we understand how these downloads are different in different states.
Interesting. Actually, I've never really done it consciously, but it in the conversation right now, or when sometimes I'm in a conversation, it comes up. But if I have to really put it into an objective world and make it kind of relatable and understandable, for example, if there's for example, when I was in the hotel industry, we had these salvers or these trays which food used to be served, and the boys, when there's a hot dish, their hands would get scalded because of the heat. So, you just find a nice tray mat which is thick enough, can absorb the heat. So that's really in the beta state where you find solutions which are very relevant to the objective reality. And then sometimes when we're in that state, we found a solution and saying, okay, now I've found a solution. What can be the next level? So the next level is where we move into the alpha and say, I'm relaxed. I just need to handle this particular thing that is a stress. For example, my dryer is not working, and I'm getting stressed because it's thing. And then I say, okay, let me relax. Let me understand what can be done. And then suddenly the flash comes that okay, you don't have the number, doesn't have to be stressed. A friend of yours who also has a similar brand, why don't you call up and understand how she's done? So sometimes when we're stressed, the answer doesn't come, but when we relax, it suddenly comes. And I thought to myself, how foolish, why was I getting so stressed about it? I just needed to relax and kind of find a way out. So that is, at an alpha state. Then you go into the theta state. For example, like yesterday, you kind of asked me about what could be the purpose for this session, and that of course could not come from a beta or an alpha. It required another level. I had to go into a higher dimension. I didn't have to go all the way up there, but in between, where I said, you know what, Akanksshaa, that there is this combination lock, just like a bank locker, where the bank and you have to turn the keys to kind of open. I said, we both have the keys, and we have to open this combination lock so that life can come onto the planet. So those are the kind of insights you get at the theta. And at the delta is, you could take Steve Jobs, who was able to create, the laptop, or, the other inventions like the light bulb and so many others. These were all done in the delta state. So those are examples. I hope I've answered them to the best I could.
Yes, absolutely. And it is amazing. So you talked about, you know, you talked about all these states, alpha, beta, and theta and delta. And you mentioned that monks or sages have this state where they are in a state of enlightenment and they have very few thoughts, and then they get maximum downloads in that. So for common people, how can they achieve these states of like absolute bliss, peace, abundance, and freedom? How can they access those states?
Wow, that's a tall question. So for people in everyday life, I mean, which also includes me and you, is the starting point would be the how do I first understand where I am in terms of my feelings? Am I feeling fear, despair, anger, anxiety? The moment I recognize it, now it's very difficult for us to do a counter and say, I'm not angry, or, immediately think of a positive feeling state, because it takes some time. So we need something which I call is a conscious distraction. So I experimented this with a couple of clients and it seemed to work. I call it the pancake stack. So pancake stack means I just keep stacking good feeling states. Because if I'm so down the ladder, just one feeling of gratitude or one good feeling is not going to stack it up. So I need to stack it. So the way I do the pancake stack is I first ask them to go to a memory where they have a very good feeling memory, to bring that memory, relive the memory, not so much about the memory, but as the feelings that that memory brings, so that that lifts their feeling stack. Then the next stack could be, give me a silver lining appreciation, something which was not working, but you found a workaround and the joy it brings. So again, stack it up with another feeling stack. Then the third stack could be something like I call is conscious daydreaming. That, what if my ideal life looks like? What would it be? How would I feel? And so I'm stacking it up. So this pancake stack or this feeling stack actually helps you to bring you down from a lower vibrational state. This consciously distracts you and builds it up. So that would be at the starting point. The next is when they need to build it up in order to go into, the no thought or few stop thing would be, now let me imagine, for example, let me imagine I'm the universe. What does it really feel like to be in that expanded state? Or what does it feel like to be freedom? What does it feel like to be joy? So I start connecting and building in that feeling state and allowing my body to embody that feeling. So what happened? That slowly takes me up into like the theta where there's fewer thoughts. And then how do I reach that? The final stage is I can connect with my breath, because the breath is the closest to a state of formlessness. So, and allow my breath to, like a strain, follow the strain of the breath and takes me into the formless state. And in that formless state, I can actually, like the sages, if I'm able to anchor it in over there, then get my downloads and insights. Of course, a caveat here that it's a journey. It does not happen overnight. It takes practice. And the more you can practice it, because our feelings are subtle, the more subtle you can get, you accelerate your journey of tuning into these higher dimensional states.
Amazing. So there is a step-by-step method and a process to it, and when you explain it that way, then it doesn't look, so daunting for everybody to do it, and then you can move to the formless beyond space and time. So beautiful. So I have a few questions that I ask all my guests. So I'm going to ask you those questions. The first one is, if you were to explain to a layman what is multidimensional being or a multidimensional soul, how can you explain it?
I would come back to the analogy or the metaphor of ice, water, and steam. Ice is basically our body. So we live in the objective reality, and the body gives us our identity. When I raise the frequency of water, of ice, it becomes water. Water takes the framework of whatever container it is put into. So that could come from my education, my own life experiences, and that's how I build up that body of knowledge for myself. And then when I raise the frequency of water, it becomes steam. So steam is that soul part of me, that energy part of me, the multidimensional part of me, which is not visible to the naked eye, but we do experience it and we know it exists, because that's what gives us life. So I would kind of put it in that form.
Very interesting. Thank you. What is holistic well-being to you?
So holistic well-being would be, how do I include my body, my mental well-being, and my luminous energy field or my luminosity well-being, because it's only when they all come together. So I use the word holographic, because holographic includes the word whole in every part. So every cell has to experience that state of wholeness, because when every cell is healthy, every thought of mine is healthy, and every atom is healthy, then that's where holistic or holographic well-being, comes into play.
Beautiful. What is the ultimate purpose of life according to you?
I think it's absolutely very simple. as I've come to understand it after traveling this journey for almost about 25 to 27 years, is that I must have a material goal, which is important. But that material goal has to help me discover another aspect of myself, or another aspect of my soul, or another aspect of my energy field. So, for example, I want to go into this project, a food and beverage product, a project which is around bone broth, bone soup. Now, the idea is to study aspects of myself which have otherwise been ignored. As a coach in the space, I work with myself, but now in a business, I need to start working with many other people. So that would bring out aspects of myself which need to be developed. So a goal has to be a manifestation of the goal alongside a self-development goal. So they two have to come into tandem.
Okay. What is love according to you?
Wow, interesting. Somebody asked me that a few days ago and I buffed it off, but I can't buff it off here. So for me, love is actually a state of being and it's a way of life. It's how I approach things. So if I'm cooking and I'm completely present, for me, that's love being expressed. If I'm in a conversation with someone and I'm completely present, for that is, a state of love. So for me, it's more of a state than truly a feeling.
Okay. What is self love according to you?
That brings to mind, in the aircraft, and they say first put your oxygen mask. And I think for me, I needed to know myself, to kind of work through all my, my different blocks and self sabotages to be able to feel self love first and then be able to give it to others. So that's really self love is working on myself first.
What is your parting message for our audience today?
It's simple, it's not impossible. And all that you need to look at is to look at how do I move into a better vibrational state and a better vibrational state until I'm in that state where I feel complete and I feel good about myself. And it's a simple journey.
Where can people find you? How can they contact you?
Okay, so I would say my LinkedIn profile, which I will share with you because that has the body of my knowledge out there and everything about me, my entire journey. And if they need, I have an email address, which I'll also share with you, mayasabina@gmail.com.
So, Maya, it's been so lovely to have you here, and it's a great pleasure. And you are doing luminous energy work and especially spreading light. So, keep spreading love and light. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Akanksshaa. Bye bye.